Yeah, they, you know, that's what that arrogance is what gives them that that desire to play God, that believing that just because they can, not only should they, but they almost have to. Like they have to do this because there is no one else that has been graced with the brilliance or the magic or the knowledge that I have. So I'm obligated to do this, even though it's going to do all of this stuff to those around me. Not necessarily a fatal flaw, but something that also goes kind of hand in hand with that to make it actually work is they're usually also pretty detached from those around them. They don't have a lot of compassion or empathy. They just believe that at the end of the day, what they're doing is better. So it really doesn't matter who they hurt.
They tend to be kind of like zoomed out. So they
Hmm.
look and they see people. They don't look and they see person.
Releasing your inner dragon. All right, Marie, we are going to continue on our 12-part series of character archetypes. I think it's part four. It could be part
Yeah,
three. I don't
something
think it's
like
part
that.
four. All right. So today we're going to talk about the magician archetype. And this is one that I think that a lot of people don't know the depth of. And I definitely didn't until I started doing a little bit of research on this. But what is your understanding of the mage archetype, the magician archetype?
Sure. So this is actually one of the kind of classic Jungian archetypes. So it actually isn't first and foremost a fantasy archetype. It doesn't necessarily mean somebody who uses magic, right? The magician is somebody who has the ambition to change the world through their willpower, their abilities, their connections, or in fantasy, their actual magic. Right? So they want to alter reality to meet their vision. And internally, they're supposed to struggle with like balancing of their desire to change the world versus like the downside of doing this with the unintended consequences.
Hell is paved, or the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And a lot
That's
of
the one.
magicians, that's what they're doing. They're like, no, I'm going to make things
Yeah.
better. I mean, yeah, we have to slaughter 90% of the human race, but it's going to make it so much better.
Yeah. For those 10%, it's going to be great.
It's going to be awesome. I
Yeah.
think the other 90% would be like, yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly.
But they're not always, I mean, that's kind of paints them in the antagonist way, because
Mm.
there's a lot of ways that magicians can be used.
So that's the thing. It's actually one of your most versatile archetypes, right? There are often in classic fantasy, there are mentors, as we spoke about, I think 2 episodes ago or something.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and in the mentor archetype, the classic example of this is Gandalf.
Yeah.
Gandalf is absolutely a magician archetype who is also a mentor. He does want to change the world, and he very much struggles with when to use his gifts, right? Why doesn't Gandalf just teleport everybody there and destroy the ring? Because doing so would have unintended consequences that he cannot predict, and therefore it might result in him seizing the ring for himself
Mm.
and turning into bad Gandalf, right? In the same way, actually, we have that scene in the movie where Galadriel's like, and in
Hmm.
place of a dark king, you will have a white queen. You know, it's all like
Yeah.
flaring lights and stuff. It's the same kind of thing. She's also a magician,
Hmm.
right? And when to use her power is a constant like wrestling match when it doesn't have bad consequences.
Dumbledore will be another example of that on the other side, or
Mm.
on the Harry Potter
Mm,
side.
yeah.
But these are
And
actual magicians.
yes.
Because that's
So
the thing. I was gonna say that's the thing. They don't have to be an actual magician. So,
no.
like in a cyberpunk world, if you had somebody that was like a massive hacker coder that's trying to manipulate the world to make it a better place,
Mm,
that would fall into that archetype of the magician because they're trying to use knowledge to transform the world. And that's really kind of way I see it is kind of in that knowledge light or transformation or, control or whatever.
yeah. And that's, I mean, Morpheus for me falls into the magician mentor archetype, right? Because he is trying to change the world.
Hmm.
And he uses his magic
Knowledge.
powers, his abilities to use it.
Yeah.
Um, you don't even like, it doesn't even have to be at all magic. It can be just somebody who has enormous willpower and the ability to sell their vision
Hmm.
to enough people to buy into it. Right. As I said, this is a Jungian archetype, and Jung was actually a philosopher and a psychologist, not a fantasy author. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it is actually about that ambition and the willpower behind it.
Yeah, one of my favorites, and this is slipping into because we were just talking about mentors, but slipping into the antagonist. One of my favorite magician archetypes would be Dr. Moreau.
Mm.
So he's using science to, you know, as his magic. So he's not a magician, but he does believe that through his knowledge and control of that knowledge, he can transform and make a better race of people. And he's garnered a lot of followers around him who also believe, or at least, I guess, once you have a pig's head put on your body, you kind of have to believe that he's doing the right thing. Um, but the thing I love about him as an antagonist is when the protagonist shows up, Dr. Moreau just assumes that he's on his side. Because he's just in this, there's no way I'm in the wrong. There's no way anyone would see me in the wrong. Like, obviously, I'm the good guy. And so when you, the protagonist, shows up, you're obviously here for me. You're on my side. Like, there's not even a question in Dr. Moreau's mind that what he's doing is morally bankrupt.
So, well, morally good, even though it's, from the protagonist side, we like it's morally bankrupt.
Right.
Um,
That's what I mean.
yeah, yeah. So magicians make some of your best villains for that
Hmm.
exact reason,
Hmm.
because they have this vision of the future. It's a vision that they can sell both to the protagonist and the reader. And that, it becomes a very clear motivation, even if it's a motivation that disturbs us, even if it's a motivation that we don't want to acknowledge, right? We don't want to like get behind. It's still a motivation one can understand. This person has a vision that they are selling. Their vision might be terrible.
Right.
Um,
Again, think about those 10% that are going to survive. They're going to have a great life.
it's going to be amazing for them.
Yeah, yeah. Don't think about the 90% that are going to die. Just put those out of your head.
Yeah, just forget about
Sacrifices have to
those.
be made.
Yeah,
Sacrifices have to be made. It's just the way it
absolutely.
works. Yeah.
Exactly.
And that does. It makes such a great villain, a
Mm,
villain who truly believes in
yes.
what they're doing is better for everyone.
And what makes that kind of villain really great is they because they have this conviction, they're not muhaha evil,
Right.
right? They genuinely believe they're going to make the world a better place.
Yeah.
They're,
Like I said, that's the thing that
yeah,
attracts me to Dr. Moreau. Like
yeah,
he 100% is shocked that anyone would not agree
mm,
with him.
yes,
So
yeah,
I do love that as the villain.
yeah.
What about some protagonists
So
that would fit that?
magician protagonists are very, very interesting because they are essentially very conflicted about when to use their power. So it can be hard to pull that off. Okay. Because the problem with writing that kind of a protagonist is it comes to a point where the reader's like, okay, but when are you now going to unpack this power and actually do something? as
Yeah.
opposed to as opposed to farting around in the wind and, trying to fix whatever the problem is here.
Well, you
Um,
just earlier you mentioned Galadriel. She
yes.
is paralyzed. She can do nothing, even though
Yeah,
she could do everything. So
exactly.
her inability to take the chance of destroying everything prevents her from doing anything.
Yes.
And so that's a great example of that. And obviously that's not a character that you can center a story around. She's a
Very
great
difficult.
peripheral character,
Yeah.
but she's not going to be, in that state.
Yeah.
Obviously they used her in something else, but we won't talk about that. We'll just talk about the movie.
So I will stand by my opinion of Rings of Power that the story arc they were going for is exactly that.
Yes.
Using your powers when you shouldn't and learning to not and learning that that is a bad thing, right? I'm
And
not
I
saying they
100% agree with you.
executed it well. I'm just saying that's
I,
what they were trying for.
yep. I will 100% agree with you as I do think that's where they were going
Yeah.
or trying to go.
Yeah. I think unfortunately they just didn't give it enough breathing room,
Yeah.
ultimately. And it kind of killed it. But there was a lot of good stuff there as well, like to be honest.
Yeah.
Especially in the second season. Oh my goodness.
Never made
Anyway,
it that far.
sideshow.
It
Um,
broke my heart way before then. But no, but Galadriel, I mean, that's a
yeah,
great example of why it's so hard to use the
yeah.
magician archetype for a protagonist.
Yes.
But who are
So
some,
the one that has done it really well is Doctor Strange in the movies,
mhm,
right?
yeah,
Um, because he actually does use his power kind of willy-nilly and then ends up in a situation where, he has to try and fix it with I have come to bargain, Dormammu. And
yeah,
then throughout the rest of the build up to the finale, we see him use his power very lightly,
mhm,
right? And what is at the end, what is the thing that he does? The only thing that he says to Tony Stark is like, this, there is one path where we all come out of this. And that's the only thing that he says to him,
mhm,
right? He doesn't cast a spell, he doesn't do anything like that, but he's the peripheral player there, right?
mhm,
But in his own movie, he actually screwed up using his power and had to learn control and
mhm.
not to do that.
Also, one or two that might be an interesting discussion. Severus Snape.
Yes, to an extent.
Right. That's why I said it'll be an interesting discussion.
Yeah. The thing about Severus is Severus doesn't want to change the world. Severus has knowledge, but he doesn't actually want to change the world. I would call Severus more of an anti-hero mentor.
The reason why I brought him up with the magician is because it's sort of like the Galadriel issue, only it's the motivation that I want to be on both sides. I don't want to take a side. I actually want to be on both. And when you have two opposing sides, like he was trying to dance between, I think that's what caused him not to be able to do his thing.
So Severus, when you get right down to it, the conflict is actually between ideology and his personal relationship.
Hmm.
He is in love with the memory of Lily
Yes.
Potter,
Yes.
and she pulls him to Dumbledore's side.
Hmm.
But Snape ideologically, and I'm sorry to say this for all the Potter fans out there who really, really like Snape, but honestly, Snape ideologically aligns with Voldemort.
Yeah.
He does not align naturally with Dumbledore.
Yeah.
So he would be wicked if he had not fallen in love, is I think
I agree.
the thing there.
I agree. And that's what I'm saying. That's why I thought it'd be an interesting thing because he would then use his knowledge to try and shape the world to his ideology
Mm,
for just like Voldemort was doing. That's what I was saying.
yeah.
It's a really interesting thing that he is kind of trapped between these two worlds and he can't just turn his back on either one. He can't make a decision. He can't, and that's what kind of paralyzes him from because he could do the same thing on Dumbledore's side. He could use his power to shape the world and, you know, for the better,
Mm.
but he can't get out of his own way, and he's kind of stuck there.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm still he doesn't quite have the ambition to change the world though. Snape, I mean, for all that Snape is a strong character, he's not a leader. He's not a seller of vision,
Right.
you know. Um, Neither is Harry for that matter. The magician in that series is 100% Dumbledore and
Oh yeah.
Voldemort
Yeah.
on
Yeah. Yeah.
on the evil side because Voldemort is a
100%.
magician all the way,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
He wants to use his power to shape the world to his
yeah,
way.
yeah. And Dumbledore, is using his power to shape the world his way, in part by shaping Harry.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know if Snape. I don't know if Snape quite. He doesn't feel like a
Yeah.
natural fit to magician for me.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, I just want to throw it in there because I think it's an
Yeah,
interesting thing to kind of delve into.
hundred
All right.
percent.
So we've taken an archetype and we put it through three different um tropes, the mentor, the antagonist, and the protagonist. But there is another one which I think is really cool, which is the trickster. So
Yes.
things like Loki or Q from Star Trek. They're mischievous. They're trying to change the world, but not for any other reason than chaos. Any other reason than their own enjoyment and their own entertainment, as opposed to, but they believe in what they're doing. They believe that they should do what they're doing, especially Q.
Yeah, Q is a very interesting case because Q is obviously a magician. He has the power to change the world. He is careful about using his power despite the fact that it doesn't look like it. He is cautious. And yet, he is changing the world.
Yeah.
But he is also a trickster. And that is
Mm-hmm.
100% true.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing about using any of these archetypes and all the roles they can play in is always like adapting it to what will make sense in your story,
Mm-hmm.
right? And one of the ways that you can figure out that is by writing short stories. And we have a great sponsor that will help you do that. So, Drake, do you want to tell us about the L. Ron Hubbard contest?
Yes, the Writers of the Future contest. This is a really, really cool thing and something I wish I would have known at the beginning of my career. I remember when I first heard about this, I was at a book festival kind of writers event. It was actually here in Vegas. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. It's a real writing contest. L. Ron Hubbard's name's on it. I'll go and I'll enter in this. And if I win something, it can really do a great thing for jumpstarting my career. Unfortunately, when I went and checked it out, I wasn't eligible because I was already professionally published. This is something that L. Ron Hubbard made to actually give back to the writing community. This is for unpublished writers. And it's not just for writers either. They also, it started back in 1983, but shortly after that, they added a artist contest as well. So artists, writers, if you guys do not have any professional publishing credits as of yet, this is something that you're eligible for. Um, and this isn't a gimmick or anything. Like there's no cost. A lot of these writers contests, you have to pay $30, $50, whatever to enter to be a part of it. They don't charge an entry fee or anything like that. And they're also different in like this isn't some intern in some garage reading through a slush pile and just making decisions on which ones he likes and which one he doesn't. they've got some big name writers that are the ones that are judging this. This year they have Orson Scott Card, they've got Kevin J. Anderson, Larry Niven, and the list goes on. So these are professionals that are going to be judging who, is cutting the mustard through here. So if it is something you're interested in, I highly recommend it. This is one of those things that can really jumpstart your career. I mean, just these last 3 weeks, I was at 3 different conventions, including Comic-Con in San Diego and Gen Con. And I had at least 2 or 3 people come up to me and they were talking to me. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm a Future Writers winner." And I'm like, "That's awesome. I really wish I could have thrown my lot into that." So seriously, this is something that I'd recommend. If you want to check it out, you go to writersofthefuture.com, and it's something that's very important in my opinion.
I agree. And also, they have a great anthology that they bring out, which is all of their writers together, where you can also see kind of the writing quality that comes through there. And there will be links to both the anthology and the competition in the description of this video. So go ahead and check this out. And thank you very much to the Writers of the Future for sponsoring our podcast.
Yes. All
And
right.
yeah, next.
Well, but you've teased us now. You said a great way to explore the magician subtrode is through short stories.
Yes.
So I'm gonna put your feet to the fire and have you actually give us that. So what do you
You
think?
won't allow me to just let the segue stand.
I
Okay.
mean, I could.
So the reason why the magician is really good for short stories, especially as a point of view character, is because you have a shorter time period where they learn the lesson and then become more hands off. Because the problem is the moment the magician steps back and becomes very hands off, as with like Doctor Strange, you kind of lose
Yeah.
the protagonist aspect of it.
Yeah, you
And
do.
so
100%.
yeah. And so you essentially, um, the character has now learned their lesson and now they become inactive.
Yeah.
And now what?
They're going to take on another role. They're going to take on a mentor role. They're going to take
Yes.
on, something else
Yeah.
that the story needs, but is not necessarily a great protagonist role. Yeah, for me, when you use a mentor character in a longer piece of fiction, these are the characters that often catalyze the story. So they can offer forbidden knowledge or knowledge that the character can't get any other way. They can help unlock the actual protagonist potential. I mean, think about all the characters that we talked about. Every single one of these have done kind of those things. They can help set plots in motion through insights. I mean, think about with when Double Dumbledore allowed Harry to use the little memory. I can't remember what it's called.
Pensive.
Yeah, where he went back and kind of saw the trial and everything like that. So that opened up a whole thing for the plot to move forward through.
Mhm.
So they're actually a really good character to include for a lot of reasons because they're almost like a supercharged mentor. Whereas, a regular mentor is going to teach you how to use a sword or, teach you about being a ranger or whatever, but they can't really open the story up in ways like a magician archetype can.
Yes. A magician, like even if we think of like Obi-Wan Kenobi, for example,
Hmm.
Obi-Wan Kenobi was not a magician. Yeah. Because Obi-Wan Kenobi isn't really trying to per se impose his will on the world,
No.
right? Um, the Emperor is a magician,
Hmm.
100%. He is a very successful magician because he
Yeah.
did impose his will on the world.
Yep.
He changed the whole galaxy.
Yep. And
Um,
he felt that he was doing it for the right reasons
yes, in
to
his
him.
case, the right reasons were more power for me, but
Right.
but yes.
Right.
But but Yoda, it could be argued. So Yoda is an interesting question. Do you think Yoda is a magician?
That's where I was going to go next. So you beat me
Yeah.
to it. Um, I do, and here's why. Because the reason why it's an interesting question is when we meet him on Dagobah, he is a hermit. He has given up. He has hidden himself. He has removed himself from the fight, and he's kind of forced to at least play that mentor role in um that second movie, third movie,
Second movie. It's the
second
second movie.
movie.
It's Empire
Yeah,
Strikes Back.
yeah, it's The Empire Strikes Back. And he's kind of forced to take on that. But when you look at him earlier in the Clone Wars, in the first trilogy, he is a much more active participant who's trying to actually, and in some ways, I've actually had people talk to me and try to put the point that he is a part of the downfall of the Jedi Knight from back then, because of his stubbornness to follow certain rules. Like, oh no, we can't have Anakin join. This boy can't join. It's too late. He's too old. He's got too much hate in him. Instead of going, you know what? This guy's going to do it whether I want him to or not. So let me actually try to make sure that this is done as well as it can possibly be. By rejecting him, I've had people argue with me that is, Yoda's the one that kind of created Darth Vader down, it was that first thing that started him down that path. I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm just
Mm.
saying I've actually had some people argue with me, or not arguing with me, but when we got in that discussion, talk about that. And then they've got a point. I can see it.
It's an interesting question, right? I mean, obviously one cannot know because you can't check which version of the future turns out
Right.
better.
Right.
And the one that happened was the one that happened for maximum drama as designed by the writer. So, but it
Exactly.
but it is an interesting question whether, like philosophically, if you reach the point where your organization is weighed down by rules and somebody is breaking them and you cannot stop that person breaking the rules, are you better off changing your rules to fit the new reality, or are you better off trying to stick to your rules, even if it means that people are now breaking your rules? Because
Or alienated, because that's really what he did
yeah,
with
but
Qui-Gon and with Anakin. He
100%
alienated them.
they were alienated, but they were also breaking the. So I'll tell you something like that I learned from growing up in Africa. If you have rules that nobody follows, and actually the United States learned this as well during Prohibition. If you have rules that no one follows, you don't end up with people following the rules because you cling to it. What you end up with is a society that becomes more and more lawless
Mm.
because they're like, well, if I break this rule and I'm a rule breaker, then I might as well break that rule because
Yep.
the line has been crossed. Right. And you see this as well in bureaucracies. So in Africa, there's a lot of bureaucracies that don't work unless it's greased with money.
Hmm.
Right. This is just it is what it is. The bureaucracies are overwhelmed. There's a lot of people. And if you don't grease the wheels, nothing happens. And so now everyone greases the wheels. And you have a whole like shadow side of the bureaucracy that is just people greasing the right wheels. You can hire greasers of wheels,
Yeah.
to get you. Um, and that just is, and that's absurd. But that is what happens when you cling to rules.
And I think that's one of the reasons, and you probably think about this in your world building stuff, because I think about it in my world building stuff, and I think about it in the town that I live in. You know, people are going to do things that are not good for them, whether you want them to or not. And so having controlled valves to release that pressure, like Las Vegas, Sin
Mm,
City, this
mm,
was the outlet. If you wanted to do some of the illegal stuff, well, illegal in other places, this is where you'd come. It gives you a legal place to do something that is illegal somewhere else. But I mean, even like here, prostitution is actually not legal in Vegas. It is legal 30 minutes outside of Vegas. I mean, there are brothels, literally full-on brothels that are just advertised as brothels. You go in, you pay for sex.
Mm,
Um, Technically there it's not legal here, but there is the little driving billboards that drive up and down the strip that say, you know, call this number to have girls delivered right to your hotel room. So, it's not legal in certain aspects, but it still has these these outlets, these valves to release that pressure. And so that is something a society needs. When you
yeah.
have those stringent rules by allowing certain legal avenues. Otherwise, you're right. Like during Prohibition, you just had the speakeasies. And we're going to still serve booze and we're still going to do it, but now we're outside of the law.
Yeah.
Now, if something does go wrong or whatever, it's not controlled, it's not regulated, it's just
And
outside.
and the problem is no society is set up to deal with like 50-60% of their society being outside the law.
Yeah,
And prohibition creates that.
yeah,
Prohibition puts 50 to 60 people out. Because people have been drinking alcohol since forever. You can change the law all you like. It's not gonna, you know, like I have been to the Arab world, and there are like for all that there's a actual strict prohibition on booze. You see Saudis driving out of Saudi Arabia to Qatar and so on, and drinking there.
yep,
Like it happens, and this is the thing, you're not going to stop people. You're just going to turn 50 to 60% of your society lawless. And
yeah.
once they start, it's like, why was OJ Simpson like, seen as kind of a hero? Was the OJ Simpson? No, it was the Al Capone. Why was Al,
Okay.
sorry,
Yeah.
what is
I
Al
was like,
Capone?
I don't think you're using the right
No, I know.
person.
But the reason why Al Capone was seen kind of as a hero is because he was a prohibition runner,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
people saw that as a public service. So,
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, yeah. So anyway,
All
we
right.
strayed there. We strayed a
We
little
have.
bit,
We have.
but
Um,
it does apply to like the question of Yoda, because is the thing with Yoda that when he was in a position to change the world, he chose not to.
mhm.
And his failure contributed to his opposite number winning. Like, I don't lay the whole thing on Yoda, right?
Right,
But
of course
Yoda
not.
made some
And I don't
mistakes.
actually, I don't, I'm going to push back where you said chose not to. I actually think he did choose. He chose to reject it and not bend. He
Yes.
chose to not give that release valve. Like, okay, there's this one thing. We probably should make an exception to this because if not, this could come back and bite us big time in this. So I think he did choose. I just think he chose the other direction, which was no, no, no. The way the way we're changing the world, the way our rules are set up for what we are in this society, this is the way it needs to be.
Yeah.
So
And his opposite number was also a magician, and that magician won. You know,
yes,
the emperor
100%.
won that round. So
So this is actually a good segue to my next question. What are some typical fatal flaws that a magician archetype might have?
arrogance, hubris.
Boom, right. The very first thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it, it is your first biggest fatal flaw. And if we go
yeah,
back to Doctor Strange as a protagonist, he comes with that built in. Right?
yeah. All of
Um,
them do.
yeah, yeah,
That
all
is
of them do,
that's probably the
absolutely.
number one fatal flaw is they believe they're right. They have no doubt in their mind. They don't question themselves. That's why they don't make great protagonists because a part of what makes a magician archetype is their devotion to what they believe. And most protagonists work better when they're undecided, they're still struggling there because we relate to them better. We as the audience are always struggling with our decisions and deciding if this is the right move or that's the right move. Whereas this archetype tends to be, no, I'm right. Like there's no doubt that I'm right. So that's a great one.
And
Um,
my vision of the future is correct.
right.
And you're
Even the
all wrong.
90% of the people that we're going to kill, it's better for them even. They just don't realize it, but I promise you it's better for them.
I mean,
Which,
they were fine in the billions of years that they didn't exist before this moment.
that's right.
Why should they have a problem with not existing after this moment?
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going to torture them. They're just going to be gone. What's
Yep.
the harm?
Yeah, they, you know, that's what that arrogance is what gives them that that desire to play God, that believing that just because they can, not only should they, but they almost have to. Like they have to do this because there is no one else that has been graced with the brilliance or the magic or the knowledge that I have. So I'm obligated to do this, even though it's going to do all of this stuff to those around me. Which I think another.
Saruman, Saruman is also a great example on that
Mhm,
of like a magician who falls because he was
mhm,
on the good side and then is tempted and tempted and tempted into acting, and eventually his arrogance and his jealousy of Gandalf leads him
mhm.
down the merry road to Sauron's side.
Yeah. Not necessarily a fatal flaw, but something that also goes kind of hand in hand with that to make it actually work is they're usually also pretty detached from those around them. They don't have a lot of compassion or empathy. They just believe that at the end of the day, what they're doing is better. So it really doesn't matter who they hurt.
They tend to be kind of like zoomed out. So they
Hmm.
look and they see people. They don't look and they see person.
Right. Right.
And that is generally what allows them to be that detached.
Yep. And for me, it all comes down to what I think is their true fatal flaw for most of these is they underestimate. They underestimate the will of others. You know, that they underestimate the will of those 90% of the people going, no, you know what? We don't want to die. We don't think that would be better for us. Or they underestimate that the change that they're making is going to cause more chaos and harm than they realized it was. That they're not going to have the ability to control the actual outcome that this causes. They get locked on their vision
Mhm.
and they miss the details of how this could actually backfire and snowball into something far worse than where we are right now.
In a protagonist, the, that fear of unintended consequences is what gives you your inner conflict, right?
Yeah.
It's what gives you your like, should I act or shouldn't I act? A good way to balance it, by the way, if you are writing this protagonist, is to give the magician a secondary non-world altering skill. So let's say you have like a mage as a an actual magician. Give him some other skill like alchemy or even sword skills, right? Let him combine sword and sorcery. And with that combo, like let him use his sword, focus on the other skill and so on, and keep the like world altering thing for, the moment when he's like, okay, now I really have to act in this one specific way.
Yeah. Yeah. Some questions that I think if you're going to write a magician archetype, I think there's some question that you should ask yourself. And if you have answers to these, it'll help you run that character better. Stuff like, what will that character never let go of? What's the thing that they believe in that they're going to die believing in? Another question would be, um, what do they refuse to believe could go wrong? Like this can't go wrong, even though obviously it probably is, but they just won't. And then the last thing would be, what ethical line are they blind to? Like our joke about we're going to kill 90% of the population. Well, the ethical line would be, I don't see them as individuals. Like they don't have individual lives and individual motivations and loves and hates and desires and goals. They're just a collective, and therefore they don't have that stuff. And so that's an ethical line that character, if we were running a magician archetype that was going to kill 90% of the population to make the lives of the 10% uber awesome, They're just not going to see that ethical line. But you're murdering people. No, 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 I'm not murdering. What? No, it's not murder. I'm making it better for them. I mean, most of them are starving anyway. It's gonna be so much better for them to be dead. Except for when you
So,
talk to the starving person, it's like, yeah, no, I'm starving, but you know what? I'm alive. I might find food tomorrow.
so one of the interesting things is playing with different ethical lines. So
Hmm.
Saruman, for example, his ethical line is the destruction of the natural world, right? So it is about in his case, the line that he is willing to cross is he's willing to rip out the trees, destroy the natural world, pervert magic, right, which is tied to the natural world. What would you say is the ethical line that Yoda is blind to?
I think early on, I think he underestimates the power of evil. I think he
I don't think
underestimates the power,
so. I don't
like
think
how,
that's the ethical line. I agree with you that he's blind to that. He is
yeah,
blind to what can happen. But I think what he's blind to is lack of empathy, lack of personalized compassion and empathy.
yeah, and you see this in the way they train the younglings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like he is not a bad person, but he doesn't understand that of um, a lack of empathy is driving him to make bad decisions.
yeah,
And I think that is one of the lessons he actually learns out of the first three movies. So when we meet him in episode 5, he has more compassion, but he is
yeah,
still somewhat blind. I mean, he gives Luke the advice of don't go, right? Don't go rescue
hmm,
your friends. Now, had Luke listened to him, we don't know what the effect would have been, of course, but I think that it would have ended poorly because Vader would have had Leia
yeah,
as well. Like Han would still be captured, but Vader would have had Leia.
yeah,
And that gives him his one of his children. And that was still a lack of individualized compassion that Yoda just did not seem capable of mastering.
yeah,
Like that individuals can matter. He looks too much at the grand. Like he's not gonna kill 90% of the population or anything like that, but he still doesn't see the impact of the individual.
yeah, yeah. I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think that's his flaw. Like that's the thing he's blind to.
This leads me to think about, I think we should talk about a little bit about some contrasts between, because we went through the magician archetype of like, oh, look, it could be this, it could be this, it could be this, but there are some differences. So like as an example, we had the trickster. So a true trickster is going to break the rules for the fun of it. They don't really have a purpose in it. They just want to do it, and it's fun. Whereas a magician trickster breaks the rules because they either have a purpose for it or they have an ambition that they're trying to achieve. So look, that's why I put Loki in that category, because he isn't just goofing around. He
Mm.
is goofing. He makes everyone else think that he's goofing around, but it's because he wants to throw them off guard so he can open a back door for the ice giants to get in,
Yeah.
or whatever. He's got a purpose. He's got a goal that is going to be something that, advantages him. And so that's one of the thing. There's two more that we didn't really talk about, but I do think that people kind of confuse these. So like the sage archetype versus the magician archetype. A sage is seeking knowledge and truth for the sake of seeking knowledge and truth, not to do anything with it, but to garner it. Whereas the magician is seeking that knowledge or truth so that they can use it to do the change that they want. And then the only other one that I think we probably should, and if you have more, that's great, but the ruler. So a ruler archetype is going to command through structure. These are the rules. We're going to do this because this is the way it is. Whereas the magician archetype is going to use those rules to try and restructure the world itself. So Palpatine's a great example of that. He works through the Senate. He uses the rules to basically end up giving himself ultimate power and raising an
Yes.
empire.
Yeah.
Funny thing is in our own world, Hitler did that same thing. He used politics by the rules to put himself in ultimate power where no one could challenge his authority. But he did do it legally. He did do it through the rules. You know, he didn't roll into Germany with an army and say, I own this now, and you're going to do what I say.
So yes,
Oh, I'm
but he also
simplifying.
changed the once he had the power, he
Right,
changed the
right,
rules, right?
right. I'm
So
simplifying it
yeah,
for
yeah,
this
yeah. So
discussion.
100%. But it is like that's it exactly. Magicians will use the rules to get what they want, and then they will change the rules.
Hmm.
The
Yeah.
ruler governs through rules. They don't change rules in order to meet their objectives.
Did I just make Hitler a magician archetype?
He is a magician archetype.
I know. I just never thought about it until I went down that path.
I mean,
Uh,
real people, of course, and even Hitler are, is a real person. So
right,
therefore, they are different. They have different,
right,
they are not just one archetype.
right.
Um, you know,
Because they're not
um,
actual story characters.
yeah, because they're not story characters. But
Right.
I would say Hitler's dominant archetype, especially in most historical tellings, is that of the essentially the evil magician, who has the will and in his case, his superpower was his oratory and
Hmm.
his ability to mesmerize a crowd, and to sell his vision to them.
So we still have about 10 minutes.
Mm,
We talked a lot about transformation.
yes.
You want to go into like a little bit more actual, so like as an example, a trickster or a magician archetype, like a common arc for them would be to start with ignorance, move into insight, which leads them to being able to influence, and then that is where the split happens to either wisdom or corruption.
Mm,
Um, so I mean, I think it might be good to just to at least touch on this a little bit if they're going to use and this really is more for that magician archetype that you're going to use a protagonist. But like, look at Doctor Strange. He's as ignorant on magic as you can possibly be because he doesn't even think it exists at the beginning of his story. So 100% ignorant. And then he loses his hands and he has to look for things and he gets the insight of, wait a minute, like you have the same thing as I do, but your hand works or your leg works or what is this? And it's like, oh, yeah, I use magic. Like that doesn't exist. And then it's like, but it has like then how is this happening? And so that's what gives him his insight. And then once he actually starts mastering it, that gives him influence over magic. And then that leads him to that choice. Do you use it for good or for evil? You know, for
yeah,
your own personal things or to help others.
yeah.
So that is kind of a traditional arc that your protagonist magician archetype is going to take through the story.
But notice that Strange started A with the flaws intact,
Hmm.
and B with the ambition already there. It was just
Yep.
manifesting in his ambition to be, the world's best surgeon, and his arrogance around that particular skill.
Yep.
And then, the humility comes, and with it comes the restraint of not using your powers all the time.
So is it that, or is it that the one who becomes the hero realizes that the path they're on can lead to villainy, and the one that becomes the villain never actually realizes that the path they're on could lead to villainy?
I think the one who turns into a villain quite often basically reaches the point where they cannot see that they are the villain.
Right.
It's like
Right. That's what I
me.
mean. They
Are
never
are
they
we the
never
baddies?
realize. Right.
Yeah,
Are we on the wrong? Are we the one that are the
yeah.
bad? Yeah.
And that comes, I mean, if you look at Saruman, I don't think Saruman ever thought of himself as evil, despite the fact that he was clearly aligned with the great freaking eye on a tower. Like, but he saw his actions as being legit, as being, and he never saw that he is, in fact, the bad guy.
Yeah.
So I think that if you want to use a magician as the villain, you do need a certain amount of unawareness from their
Yeah.
part. Like they need to be unaware of their
Yeah.
self-unaware. They can't have self-awareness.
So what are some metaphors in a story that this archetype fill in a story? What are some metaphors that it brings into a story? What do they represent
So I
for the
think
human equation?
I think they represent the need for restraint and the need for just to consider just because you can do something, does that mean you should? That's
Yeah, I would
the
I
obvious.
would call
That's the
that
obvious.
I would call that the metaphor of the
Yeah,
cost of doing this. What is the cost? Because obviously they represent power, and it changes depending on the story, but power, knowledge, privilege, vision
hacking.
of, yeah, vision of a better future in their eyes. These are all the things. But I think that the metaphor that we bring into the story by using them is the ability to have a tool to show the reader the cost of trying to change the world. So,
I think on the plus side, on the positive side, they also represent the importance of having a vision.
mhm,
Like the one thing you have to give magicians is they do change the world. And if
mhm,
their vision is actually better, and they can be kept off the off the worst paths, then their driving ambition and their will does shape the world into a potentially a better place. And you
mhm.
won't get there without that vision.
Yeah, no, 100%. Um,
I think they also represent the importance of will, speaking of of everything else, is like because they do stick to their guns,
mhm.
you know.
All the
And
way to the
yes,
end.
yeah, and sometimes you should change your mind 100%, but sometimes you should also like Yoda should probably have changed his mind, but sometimes you should stick to your guns
Mhm.
and be like, well, I do believe in this and I will fight for it.
Yeah. And also, they're called the magician. I just want to touch on this again because we didn't quite hammer it at the beginning. But remember, that's changing things through magic, like because we're fantasy writers, so we're talking a lot about that. But it could be somebody like actually I don't want to say that because I have something in the bonus round. Um, let's talk about this. I want to do something. I want to do a bonus round here and
Okay.
kind of throw some names at you and let you decide um magician or not. And it's kind of earlier where I threw in Severus Snape, but these
Hmm.
are more specific. So let's start with Tony Stark. Is Tony Stark a wizard or not? Could he fall into the wizard archetype or not?
I'm gonna go with no.
You'd kind of be right on either answer with this one, in my opinion.
Yeah.
He is a systems thinker, so he manipulates technology and all of that. He does transform himself. um, but I would lean more not because his character arc tends to fall more along the heroic or the ruler kind of story arc. Um, and also his transformation is reactive
Yes. And
as
he
opposed to
is like
proactive.
he does not have he does not, in my mind, have a vision of the world that he is
Right,
striving to achieve. He is
right.
striving to preserve the world as it is, which is why he supports the government having a register of superpowers, which is why he builds Ultron, and all the rest of that. It
Yep.
all comes down to He fears potential change from external forces and he fights to preserve it. And for
Yes.
me, that is not a magician. A
Yeah.
magician seeks change.
Right. Yeah, that's why I said I agree with you on that one. I would have gone with yes because there are some things that could fall into that, but I do believe that he's not really in that.
Mm.
Walter White,
Oh, yes.
100%. My answer is hell yes. Um,
He
I
wants to
mean,
change the world. He's blind
well,
to the,
he wants to change his world,
yeah,
not necessarily the whole world.
yeah,
But I mean, talk about a God complex. Like he has a line in that show where he's like, I am the danger.
yeah.
Like I am the thing. And it's just, yeah.
But
Now
it
he
is
does operate in the
also
shadows.
it is also very much like he has a vision of a vision of his world's future that he wants to
Mhm.
achieve. He has the super skill, which is his chemistry, and he is blind to the ethics of what he is doing, and
Yeah.
he just drives for that goal.
I mean, my favorite scene is still when he's standing in front of those pallets of $100 bills, just millions of dollars. And he's like, no, I'm in this to make sure that, my family has enough money for when I'm dead of cancer. They will not. And it's like, turn around, dude. Like, you've already achieved that. But he's completely blind to it. It just, like, yes.
Yeah.
Um, Hannibal Lecter.
No.
Okay.
Um,
Why?
so I don't think Hannibal Lecter wants to change anyone's world. I think Hannibal Lecter is much more of a sage than he is a magician. He strives to understand people and also to eat them, but he doesn't have a overwhelming ambition to alter even his own world per se. He just wants
See,
to live his life.
I'm I'm gonna push back on that. I mean,
Okay.
if you just go with Silence of the Lambs, I would agree with you on that. But when you
Mm.
include NBC's TV series, now his world is he just wants to create one more person like him, so he has an equal, which is what he tries to do with Graham. But he is a master psychological of psychological systems. He has that. He has that hidden knowledge on controlling perceptions and emotions and behavior and changing some. I mean, he takes a cop who is 100% on the side of law and tries to turn him into another Hannibal Lecter. And he delights in that transformation. He delights in that control. And again, it's more on the Dr. Moreau level stuff.
Yeah.
So
Maybe. I mean, I could see it. I could agree with you. I could agree with you.
yeah,
Yeah.
again, that's why all of these are here because all of them
Yeah.
are like, oh man. And that's the problem with archetypes. The only real way to make, and we said this before in
Mm.
other episodes of this, the best thing to do, you've created a really good archetype when they don't actually fit into exactly
Yes.
perfectly the archetype. It spills
And
over a little bit.
yes, I think that that is a key takeaway from all of these archetypal discussions that you should take away as a writer is you don't want to be in a position where we go 100%. You know,
Yeah.
you want to have some doubt about
Yeah.
whether they fit into this archetypal box. Because if you have 100% written an archetype, you have 100% written a caricature.
Sort of, because the last one is actually in that.
Okay.
Morianne Damadred from the Wheel of Time.
I mean, you could argue that she could also be a sage.
So that is something because of her authority and all that. But I actually think her control over the hidden cities is what defines her. And so I think that puts her more into the fact that she is a magician archetype because she is trying to use her knowledge. She believes that she is in the right. Now, technically, she is in the right in this case, which is,
Mm,
that's nice. It aligns with the fact that she is trying to actually save the world from the Dark One. But she does have a deep understanding of the philosophy and the history and the 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 source of the true power and everything else, and she's using that to manipulate and transform the world to get rid of the Dark One. So she's definitely a protagonist. She's on the
Hmm.
hero side. She's but she will not bend on that. She believes that she's the only one that can do it. She doesn't trust anyone else. That's why she steps outside of the tower. Of course, if you read that, you know that she is well justified in not trusting the tower. Um, so there's all of that. But I actually think that one is one that doesn't. The Sage is the only one that I think you could also put her into, but I think she fills the magician archetype almost to the T.
She does, but I would also argue that she would have been stronger for a little bit of ambiguity. And I'm not
Oh yeah.
throwing stones at Jordan, but
Yeah, no,
but
no, no.
I
I that's why I said this
yeah,
was the one that of all the others, it's much harder, I think, to
yeah,
decide where they are.
yeah. And notice that what I just said, like she could have been a stronger character with a
Yeah.
little bit more ambiguity in her archetype.
Yeah. I
Um,
agree. I agree. That's why I said I wanted
yeah,
to end with one that really is
yeah.
more in line with that. And that's why when you have that character that fits the mold, yeah, but also maybe it could be a little bit of this or a little bit of that. That makes a more interesting, more dynamic character. So, and that's the danger. And we talked about this before we even did this 12-part series of, you know, what if we say these things and people are like, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to follow these rules for this one archetype and make this exact character. Because then that, I think, creates what you were talking about before. It doesn't create a character, it creates a caricature of
Yes.
that thing. And so, well, I mean, you said earlier about Hitler.
Mm,
Yes, he's a magician archetype, but he's also a person.
yeah.
He's more dynamic than just that. That is kind of the way I want my characters to be, though. They're not real, but I want them, yes, they're this archetype, but really they could also be a little bit of this and a little bit of that because they're dynamic. They're a real person, even though they're not a real person.
And they're
So,
also like it's with Hitler especially, you know, or with people like that, like larger than life characters.
mhm.
They were different things for different audiences.
Yeah.
Hitler had a mistress that he was, uh, to all appearances and all historical record, genuinely in love with, and she was genuinely in love with him.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm
I
sure
mean,
he was a different.
at one point, it looked like he was going to take over the world. I
Yeah,
mean,
I mean, yeah, but that's, I mean, but I mean, it was different audiences to different people. Different
yeah.
different things to different people, which is also a thing that you need to remember about people is they act differently to different audiences. They behave in different ways. So, and that's also a thing to remember with characters, is a character might be a magician in public and to all intents and purposes on the outside. They might have doubts that they share with their closest friend, you know, about like, am I really right? I know I am right. No, but am I right? And getting that support and feedback. I don't know if Hitler ever had doubts. Maybe not. But
I mean, he had to because he committed suicide.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So it what it's easy to look at kind of the public persona and be like, they're only this thing. But it's like, I mean, that's the public persona. It's not necessarily the person interacting with their friends or their family or and so on. And there should be some variation in that. There should be a variation in the archetype that they're like, depending on who they interact with.
yep. Any last words on the magician archetype?
I think that magician archetypes are great for villains and mentors. And I think that if you can pull it off in a protagonist, they make for really compelling protagonists. But you must build them with a lot of internal kind of conflict, because if the reader is in the magician's head, there has to be somewhere there has to be conflict.
Yeah, I think if I was going to do a magician architect, and I didn't add this to the list. Maybe I should have added this to the list of the lightning round, Sherlock Holmes kind of thing.
Mm.
But if I was going to do a magician as the protagonist of the story, I think the narrator would be a peripheral narrator, like what Watson is to Sherlock,
Mm.
where I think it would still be that's a hard story to tell from, and Doctor Strange is one of my favorite from the Marvel universe and way before the MCU. Like I used to buy nothing, that was one of the comics that I was very religious in buying. So I did really enjoy the Doctor Strange character, but that's got to be one of the tougher archetypes to actually write as a protagonist. So,
It is a hard archetype to write as a protagonist. So
yeah,
I would advise you to have a strong character concept before you
yeah.
enter it, because
I mean,
you're
it works really well for Doctor Strange, especially in the MCU version of it,
Mhm.
because we can empathize, even though he's this arrogant jerk doctor. When he loses that, we can empathize with that. We can feel the humanity of that. And then we understand his motivation for his drive to fix that because he wants that back.
You know who else it worked well for is Rastalin Majere.
Yes.
He is 100% a magician.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Um,
And not just because he's a magician.
no, and not just because he's a magician. He is out to change the world in the
Yeah.
biggest way. He wants to
Yeah.
make himself a god.
Yeah. Never going to forgive him for Tasselhoff, but, you know, Tasselhoff
Yeah,
is my
but I mean,
favorite character of that.
but he worked as a protagonist because one, there were other characters.
I'm still here.
One, there were other characters, and two, um, he actually failed. And because he failed, you know, we are kind of like it's a kind of shocking at the end there where we learn the lesson of of Rastalin failing.
Yeah.
So he has no doubts about what he's doing until right at the end, and then he's like, "Oh, oh, oopsie."
Yeah. Unfortunately, Tracy Hickman couldn't be at Gen Con this year. He put up a post about it, but Margaret Weiss was there, and Random House did a hardback collection of the original three Dragonlances. And even though I have multiple copies, I had to pick this up from her.
I am so
So,
jealous of you right now.
so yeah,
Did you
so
get it
I
signed? Oh,
of course I got it signed. Like I said, Tracy wasn't there, which was sad because I would have loved
no.
to have both of them in here. I've been on a few panels with Tracy. I can hopefully, if as long as his health holds up, I'll meet him somewhere else at another convention. But that's what I had to go get because when we got on Dragonlance, I was like, oh, I just bought a new Dragonlance book. um, yeah, like I said, I'll never forgive Rasslin for the whole Tassoff thing, even though he didn't do it like on purpose, but it definitely his arrogance and his
Unintended
yeah,
consequences.
his
The
un he
curse of the
did,
magician.
and he didn't care. Like he
And he didn't
didn't,
care.
yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's a tough one, but like I said, I would probably, if I was going to do something like that, write it from a peripheral. And it's been way long since I read the Time of the Twins, Test of the Twins, and all that trilogy. Wasn't most of that done from like Karaman's perspective and Tassoff's
Yes.
perspective?
So Rostalin does have some um
Hmm.
chapters. Like
He
there
does. I
are,
remember those.
but he is sparing.
Yeah.
Okay. Because of the whole like magician aspect. But he is
Yeah.
still the primary mover behind that plan.
100%. Yeah.
And he is absolutely the protagonist, and he has got a few chapters. And I think that that is a great way to do the magician as a
Yeah.
protagonist,
That's why I said if
especially
I
a
was gonna,
tragic magician.
yeah. That's why that peripheral narrator, I think a lot of people they do not give enough credit to the peripheral narrator. The narrator who's in the story, who is being affected by the story. but is not actually the protagonist. Is not actually the hero. You know, The Great Gatsby, Sherlock Holmes. These are all great. You know, the big examples of that peripheral narrator.
A
But
peripheral narrator can do a lot for your story. Maybe we should do
100%,
an episode about just peripheral narrators and how much they can,
maybe.
what you can
Let
do
us
with.
know. Let us know in the comments if you want us to
Yeah.
go digging into peripheral narrators. They're they are interesting and cool, and there's a lot of advantages in telling a story from that outside perspective. But somebody that I don't want to get too deep in it, but the thing I love about it is I don't want to write an omniscient, which is a peripheral narrator outside of the story. The nice thing about a peripheral narrator inside of the story is they're also being affected by the story. They're a part of it. I mean, Tassoff was killed by it.
Yeah. All right. I think that is a great place on which to end this episode. Let us know in the comments if you want us to hit peripheral narrators, and we will see you soon for another one.
Bye. If you are ready to take your writing to the next level and work with a group of highly motivated, dedicated writers who are all working to not only improve their writing, but improve your writing, plus you get to work with me on a weekly basis, then I'll encourage you to check out writersroom.us. This is a website that I have created that I really wish I had 30 years ago. It's everything a writer needs to become a better writer. Not only do we do weekly critique sessions, both from other members as well as me, we have daily writing sessions, I do monthly classes, Q&As, we have activities, I do all sorts of learning exercises, such as I do a quarterly writing prompt contest, and just tons and tons and tons of things. So if you're ready to get serious about your writing and you want to actually finish that novel and have a chance of it being published, then I encourage you to head on over to the Writer's Room and join me there. And as a special promotion for listeners of Releasing Your Inner Dragon, I'll go one step more. If you would like to get 50% off for 3 months, reach out to me. There's a million ways you can do that. You can do it through starvingwriterstudio.com, drakeu.com, any of my social medias such as LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, X, whatever. Reach out to me, say that you would like to check out the Writer's Room for 50% off, and I will send you a link that will allow you to do just that. So hopefully you're ready to start getting serious about writing, and I'll see you in the Writer's Room.
Thank you for tuning in. This is Marie Mullaney, your co-host on this literary adventure. Our goal is to provide you with valuable insights and discussions on writing. If you believe in our mission, please like and subscribe our podcast. Sharing our episodes with your community not only helps us grow, but also contributes to a richer, more diverse conversation about storytelling. We appreciate your support. For a deeper understanding of the topics we've discussed, head over to Just in Time Worlds on YouTube. It is a treasure trove where fantasy meets history and science. Every Tuesday, you'll find new videos that delve into the intricacies of world building, drawing from our rich real-world history. Whether you're a writer, a role player, or just a fantasy enthusiast, Just in Time Worlds offers unique insights that will enrich your perspective. Check it out and join the journey of crafting incredible worlds.